IVM.
We would like to thank Storytel for sponsoring this show. Storytel is an audiobook platform that lets you hear hundreds of thousands of stories on your mobile, PC, wherever you prefer. This week I'm going to recommend a modern classic. It's a story that many have seen but few have heard or read. Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. The story is loosely based on the War of the Roses succession fights in 15th century England. When you hear Roy Dotrice narrate the story, it really brings it alive. Go to storytel.com/IVM and you'll be able to get your first month for 99 rupees. That's 200 rupees off the regular $2.99 a month price. That's storytel.com/IVM. Go get it now.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawala, your peak performance coach, life coach, emotional intelligence practitioner, and NLP practitioner. I'm also the founder of Abzo Expertise Unique, and my organization constantly aims at building leaders across continents. After having worked with so many dynamic business honchos, entrepreneurs, startups, CEOs, management gurus, parents, and student communities worldwide, I am convinced that every individual has unleashed potential, and all we really need to do is realize it. Watch the magic unfold, enhance quality of life, relationships, and professions. On my show, be ready for some riveting conversations with inspirational people, snippets, stories, and much more. So here I am on this exceptional journey to find empowerment and inspiration anywhere I can. Come join me on this breathtaking path of self-realization, potential maximization, positivity, and most of all, embrace your inner power. You are on your way to empowering yourselves. Welcome to the Empowering Series with Zarina Poonawala. On today's episode, I'm in conversation with an exemplary entrepreneur. His resilience and determination to make online learning an immersive experience gave birth to India's mobile-first digital learning product. Please welcome Achin Bhattacharya, founder and CEO of Notebook. Hi, Achin.
Hi, Zarina. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being on the show, and it's such a pleasure to have this conversation with you today. Achin, how has this year been for you? Let's begin with that.
Well, Zarina, undoubtedly, this particular year, 2020, I think for all of us, this pandemic has been very painful. Undoubtedly, we lost so many lives. People suffered in different ways, job losses, economy going into a tailspin, medical facilities across the globe being put to litmus test. The way I look at it, world has again pressed the reset button. All of us need to come out of our comfort zones and re-establish our credentials in the change scenario to prove our relevance and contribution, to the world to justify our existing entitlements. And this has happened earlier also. Reset button has been pressed earlier also. So whether you look at World War, Industrial Revolution, Cold War, or maybe economic liberation in mid-90s. However, this particular scenario, this pandemic, has by far been the worst that we have seen in our lifetimes, with everyone getting impacted. However, amidst all this mayhem, what has been immensely emotionally satisfying is to be able to contribute in our own humble way at Notebook towards the education of more than 1.5 million students who started using Notebook during this pandemic. To be able to conduct so many teachers training, working closely with more than 1,000 schools, more than 75% of which are in semi-urban and rural areas, aspirational districts. So it has been very soul satisfying to that extent to be able to contribute in our own little way to so many lives.
That's interesting. And any lessons that you've learned over this entire year?
Yes, Zarina, very good questions. First of all, a very good question. I must compliment you for this. Two lessons I'll say. First and foremost, this pandemic has taught us how little we actually need.
True.
So when we actually step out of a lifestyle trap and we realized that how little we actually need. And second, I think very important is that as a society, we are interconnected. We all need and depend on each other my neighbor's action has a direct impact on my well-being. And this pandemic has again proved this. I remember uh, one of the epic literary work by Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, Rajarshi, very, very famous literary work, where he said, and I'll just quote one line, which really explains this. If the city is on fire, places of worship cannot be safe either. This pandemic has really taught us that it's not only about our own individual survival or comfort, it's also about the well-being of people around us, which is as important as our own well-being. Because if they are not safe, if they are not taking adequate precautions, if they are suffering, sooner or later it's going to impact us. So I think these are two key lessons, Zarina.
Fantastic. And quite true, actually. We've realized the importance of necessities. Like they said, that the first place we ran to was not shopping malls and brands. We actually ran to our grocery stores to fill up stock, fill up rations
Right.
for the house. So I think, yes, you're quite right about that. Definitely two lessons that everybody's probably learned from the pandemic, Achin. And, speaking of this year, the fact that learning by itself really changed and transformed because this entire digital learning bit came into play, right? Very
Right.
strongly, especially in India. I believe we've not seen that kind of active digital learning ever. And it's more like a push come to shove situation where we didn't have an option, and that's why everybody got onto the bandwagon. But you already started something in that area, in that industry, in that field with a vision. So tell us about that vision. Tell us about the vision for Notebook.
Uh, then I think as far as vision of notebook is concerned,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I always firmly believed in is that education, the way I look at it, is the single solution to all social levels, all socio-economic problems that as a society we face, be it unemployment, be it inequality in terms of wealth distribution, education of girl child, wish for better
Mm-hmm.
political discourse. So if you look at all these issues, if there is one single thing that can solve this and solve this perpetually,
Mm-hmm.
is education, right? Then again, if you look at a country like ours with such diverse culture across the length and breadth of the nation, issues that we face in different parts, which are quite different from each other, there's no doubt about it that centralized buildup of content, storage in clouds, and their distribution through handheld devices, simple devices with a screen,
Mm-hmm.
is a solution that we look at. So, and then again, when we look at the entire thing very carefully, in spite of the fact that edtech or digital education has existed for more than a decade now, but if you look at the whole scenario, you'll realize less than 2% students are under any kind of structured edtech umbrella. So there's a very
Right.
large section of the pyramid, more than 98% children who all deserve equal opportunity in terms of education, opportunity for a better life that they should aspire for, and they have every right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they have been outside any kind of structured edtech umbrella. So when we started Notebook, our vision has always been inclusivity. So
Right.
we always believed in something that, as far as education is concerned, we
Hmm.
believed in two fundamental things. One, it has to be engaging enough. So whatever we teach has to be interesting enough. If there's something which is interesting, a child will naturally develop liking for it. And
Hmm.
then by and large, learning is self-learning, right? And second, we believed in is inclusivity. Education cannot be for a handful, people in cities, in metros, and
Absolutely.
they already have opportunity, good schools, good teachers, but we also need to reach out to children, reach out to talent in other far-flung areas, aspirational districts, semi-urban places, rural areas. So these two, I'll say, engagement and inclusivity, very well defines or sums up our vision at Notebook.
Mm-hmm. That really actually speaks volumes about the business and even the idea behind it. I mean, the intention of making sure that there is equal opportunity and inclusivity, that I think by itself speaks volumes. Now, let's go back, Ajin, into your journey a little bit, if that's okay. I'd love to know the story behind Achin Bhattacharya, coming from a town in Kolkata to becoming a CA to an entrepreneur and everything in between. Achin, tell us about your journey.
Zainab, it has been quite an interesting one. I grew up in a small town, Kulti, which is in Bengal Jharkhand border,
Okay.
around 230 kilometers from Kolkata. And I guess my growing up years left a very profound impact on me. I spent a lot of time in my formative years with my grandfather.
Okay.
He was a very successful engineer who contributed actively to some of the most critical nation building projects of his time, be it
Right.
construction of hydroelectric power plants, ropeways in the mountains, or construction of India's largest steel plant. As a child, I used to feel so proud when I watched his old black and white photographs with key dignitaries during inauguration of such projects.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, who was so successful in his own career, took an early retirement and came back to his native place to teach local children who otherwise did not have access to quality education. And as I told you that we lived in an area which was very near to the state border, literally at a stone's throw,
Mm-hmm.
there are multiple languages. So language never mattered when he taught, be it Bengali or Hindi or English. Focus was always on conceptual clarity in the most engaging way. I grew up in a house which was more like a library with lots of trees and a German Shepherd for company, my best friend in growing up years, with so many
Oh, nice.
and there were so many books in every room. All we had was bookshelves.
Mm-hmm.
He is a man of very varied taste when it came to books. Thus, world history and economic books shared self space with subjects like construction engineering. Travelogues found company with beautiful Russian pictorial books for children.
Mm-hmm.
He told me so many stories about anything I asked him. I remember asking him why a plane flies when I was in class 1. And he not
Okay.
only explained the whole concept to me, but worked for a fortnight to build a small toy plane with a remote and showed me how and why it flew in our courtyard. I used to really look forward to power cuts as storytelling sessions.
Hmm.
Whenever power went off and our black and white Telerama TV fell silent, I held his hand and started asking questions. And he never ever refused to answer a single one. There's one thing that I learned at a very young age is the power of storytelling.
Right.
Now, today, my grandfather is 90 plus. Age has finally caught up with him. At times, he forgets recent events. But all earlier incidents he remembers with dates. And when I go to him, he still corrects my pronunciations. Any city in the world I have traveled, when I met him after coming back, if I just tell him the name of the place, he can
Hmm.
speak for hours about the history, geography, culture, language, food habits of that place. It really astonishes, sometimes if my friends are around, they're surprised
Hmm.
because he's from a generation who didn't learn to Google things or go to
Right.
Wikipedia, but razor sharp memory which never fails. So I think he had a very big impact on me, especially when I saw him teaching and impacting so many lives. And how at a later date, I remember some of his students whom I met in later years in different parts of the world and the kind of impact that he has been able to create on those lives. In fact, as I was telling you, that engagement has been at the core of Notebook.
Right.
Engagement, ensuring that education becomes an immersive and meditative experience. So this is something that I really learned from him in terms of creating engagement, in terms of making a particular topic interesting. My mother also had a great impact on me. She was a very bright student who got married very early, didn't pursue higher education, but very imaginative. She's a poet. And she taught me literature and history in storytelling mode. So these are things that really left an impact in me as a child. Then when I completed my schooling and I entered college at Kolkata, my father wanted me to fund my own education. It was a part of his belief system. He believed in it, which really helped me. I remember in a very short span of time, I became popular as a teacher, very popular. Focus was always outside in, like
Mm-hmm.
generating interest of student was the key. And I found that Even during my chartered accountancy days, I used to teach my friends who insisted that I explain to them what I myself personally understand. So I believe that, these formative years of being closely associated with teaching, understanding the fact that if you make something interesting for someone, he or she will definitely follow up on it and do great. That really helped me. At a later date, post completion of my education, when I completed my chartered accountancy and I started my professional careers, I worked with the best consulting houses. I got an opportunity to work with PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Deloitte. This gave me an opportunity to interact and learn from many entrepreneurs and business houses from all over the globe.
Mhm.
Understand their stories, their aspirations, how they build their brands, how they have been successful, and more importantly, lessons from their failures, how they turned back, how they fought back, which I understand is very important, the resilience part. As far as I'm concerned, I always wanted to be a social entrepreneur, and I was very sure that I wanted to do something which really touches many lives positively. Unless until you make a broader impact, I always believe that it, life is not worth living. I always felt that I wanted to do something which will have a far bigger impact.
Right.
Education was a natural choice because given my growing up years, and also because, as I told you, that I look at it as a single solution to many other issues, right?
True.
I remember once I visited Andhra. I was visiting a small village there, and at that point of time, I was already thinking about this. This idea was very much in my mind, and I was still thinking about how exactly to go about it. It was a weekday, and I saw a building which looked like more like a storage space for construction material. When I finally spoke to some local people, I realized that it was a school. I didn't see any teachers or students or any classes taking place, but I saw a few teenage boys looking at their smartphones and looking at some music video on YouTube. For me, that was a Eureka moment. I understood that there's no doubt about it that digital education is here to stay. And just like every other arena, every other field which is changing with time, education, unlike them,
Hmm.
has by and large remained same for a very long period of time. That chalk and talk pedagogy, instructor-led sessions, one-way monologues, that has been around for many years. So I understood that this is an area which definitely it is worth exploring and we can do good job at it.
Right.
So that, I guess, was my eureka moment, and I realized that this is something that I wanted to start.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. But you obviously must have faced your fair share of challenges on the way as well, Achin. With so much on your plate and having to deal with so many different people or having to sort of connect and make things work. How did you land up doing that?
Of course, Arena. Uh, Undoubtedly, when we started off initially, first thing that struck me was that to understand the need gap, because
Mm-hmm.
unless until you understand the need, how do you service it, right? We wanted to understand that how we could add value, how could we be relevant. So, as a first step, I visited more than 100 districts across the country, uh, mostly aspirational districts, spoke to many parents, teachers, students, interacted with many successful private tutors, attended their classes. In the process, what I understood, and it reaffirmed my belief about few critical aspects. First and foremost, every child has a unique learning curve. Hence, identifying, recognizing, and nurturing it,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, is the key, right? That one shoe fits all approach doesn't work in today's age. Second, I think another thing which is very, very important is ensuring that we have short, crisp, and well edited content. See, we need to understand the fact that time is precious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to ensure that content is short and well edited, I think that is very, very important. Third, what I realized is that a child needs to be an active participant. See, in the learning journey, a major problem that we face in lecture method in classrooms is very often the child is lost. He or she may be just nodding his head, but his mind may be elsewhere. Might be thinking about the new bicycle that his dad bought and he wants to go home and take a ride. So how do you ensure that the child is not only physically present but also mentally present, is completely aligned, right? That is a huge challenge. So we started working on that. Another aspect which we understood will be key was pedagogy. Pedagogy is very important. How do we structure the entire content? Like, for instance, we understood that because of pedagogy, at times it is very difficult for the child to focus on takeaways. So you study something, you spend your time, you invest an hour. But after investing an hour, what are you finally left with? Are there some key takeaways which we focus on? When we start a lesson, do we start with an interest builder which really strikes a chord with you? Then again, 2 3 other key aspects that we realized. One was language. Bilingual content was very important, that we have extensively worked on in Notebook. That will come to it in later part. And involvement of the academic community. So considering this, when we understood that, okay, these are aspects that we really need to focus on. Another key challenge, I'll say, EdTech, as an industry before this pandemic, naturally this pandemic changed things, it acted as a catalyst and fast tracked the entire digital adoption. Otherwise, EdTech as an industry, one of the key challenges that it always faced was the believability factor. So how do people actually trust EdTech as a reliable solution provider? So how do you do that? In order to ensure this, we understood there were 2 key factors. One was technology at its best has to be only an enabler. Education has to come first. Technology cannot be more important than education. And second, involvement of academic community. Teachers need to be involved. So these were key challenges that, we started working on.
That's nice. That's very interesting. And they're all challenges that need to be addressed. And glad that you're doing that. How about the fact that, there is this entire future ahead of us where digital learning is going to really become the platform? It looks so. So naturally, though the world is going back to this so-called new normal, which I don't find new from any angle, you just see people with a mask on their face, but the rest is all the same. So I'm not really finding much of a difference. But I think this whole new normal is a bit overrated, in my opinion, in terms of the way we're using it. But how do you see the future of education and the future of digital learning, Achin?
So the way I look at it, I think I agree with you when you said that this entire new normal thing is a bit overrated. Couldn't agree more. Education, I believe the basics of education will never change, right?
Right.
The job of any technology, the job of any platform, any edtech brand is to ensure that we act as a bridge between a great teacher and a student who needs him or her the most. The beauty with technology is that we can amplify the effect. A teacher can step out of his 40 pupil classroom and reach 1,000 students. That's the beauty of technology. A teacher who may be physically present in an urban area, in a city, can actually reach out to a student in a far-flung district. That's the beauty of technology.
True.
Having said that, I believe, schools, the way I look at it, are miniature version of the society. School serves a much larger purpose. It's not only about education. It's also about overall development of a child. It's also about extracurricular activities. It's also about learning to coexist, learning to share and care. These aspects will always be important. So the way I look at it, in future, I look forward to a more hybrid system, wherein even after, say, a few months down the line, when we really hope that things are much better, things go back to where they were, schools reopen, I believe digital education will still very much exist, but not as an alternative. The objective is not to replace the teacher,
yes,
but to support and supplement the teacher in a big way. So the way I look at it, it's not about creating a platform. It's about creating a teaching aid to ensure that we support and supplement the existing system and optimize the outcome.
Right. That really makes a lot of sense, because I think some things in this world can never be replaced and should not be replaced, and teachers definitely would be one of those things. you know, and I think quite rightly said, Achin, that you should use this as an aid and not a platform. So there's no replacement. It's just additional support, and adds to the fact that you can escalate the concept and sort of make it more accessible. That's the whole
Right,
idea, right?
right, Zaina. And say, as taking a clue from this, so what
Mm-hmm.
we are discussing, as I told you, that the way we have structured things at Notebook. Notebook can be accessed both inside the classroom as well as outside. So when a teacher is teaching in his or her class, if it's a 40-minute period, right, what we ensure is in between that, a teacher can play a short notebook video for 6 to 8 minutes. Our videos are very short and crisp.
Right.
And then explaining the concept, taking the discussion further. Because in today's age, the role of teachers have also changed. Like educators are no longer information providers, because information is anyways accessible at your fingertips. There's an overflow of information. So the role of educator is more like a moderator, like a facilitator, to ensure that you promote engaging peer-to-peer discussions, uh, engaging further discussion about the topic. And these are things which only a teacher can do. If a child is not doing well, a friendly pat going and sitting beside the child, talking to him, because you need to understand there are a lot of emotional factors as well, which only a teacher can take care of. So
True.
I believe these are very important factors. But building the engagement factor, so that I was coming to, because for instance, it is important. Like if I may ask you, Zarina,
Mm-hmm.
that during your school days, which was your most favorite subjects and why?
I'd rather be telling you which subjects I did not like, Achin.
That's
Maybe that list was longer, but one of my favorite subjects, definitely, I will give you two. One was literature and one was history. They were my favorites as such. And I will also tell you which one I hated. And I think that goes, it's sort of a stereotype and goes for a lot of people, but it's maths. I really did not like maths, but unfortunately, I need that more than history and literature in the business now. So that leaves me no option, but that's that. History and literature.
And if I may ask you, why so?
I think what I enjoyed was the depth. One, I enjoyed the subjects by themselves, and I also enjoyed the teachers. So both these subjects for me were interesting. I liked theory answers, honestly. I liked being that mugging student until I realized that I should actually have some practical understanding of what I'm studying. And then history seemed to be that platform. I think when I started to learn the 1857, the revolt, at
Mhm.
that point I got really interested in history, and maybe since then there was this, you know
Great.
yeah,
Understood.
feeling of wanting to study it and being more interested, but also the teachers were wonderful.
So I think you have answered it very appropriately. So see, two key words from your answer.
Mm-hmm.
You started off saying that you enjoyed the subjects and you liked the teachers, right?
Yes.
So that clearly shows the kind of profound impact that an educator has on us, right?
True.
And it has got to do a lot with regard to the fact as to how much interest or engagement he or she is able to drive. Like when you were studying about the revolt, 1857, you told us that you really got interested.
Mm-hmm.
You like the topic, right? And
Mm-hmm.
once you like something, you explore it further. And that further exploration to me is learning,
True.
which, as I was telling you, is a more immersive process. So that has been our core objective at Notebook, to ensure that we really help a student, we really help a child to get that kind of interest, to evoke such kind of interest. So that has been our one of our key goals at Notebook.
That also reminds me that as a science student, Achin, I realized that I wasn't very fond of physics, but I was extremely fond of chemistry, again because of the teacher that taught me, and not my school teacher, my tuition teacher. Just the way a teacher can make something so dry as a subject so interesting also, I think that plays a very important role. So when you're doing these short videos and you're creating content, are there any particular things that you keep in mind while creating engaging content for your students?
Yes, Arina. When we started this, as I was telling you, that there was one thing that we were really thinking on. how to ensure that a child is an active participant in the learning journey. Now, see, if you're teaching someone physically in a classroom, right? And vis-a-vis that, if you're teaching someone digitally,
Right.
there's a huge difference. So digital brands need to be far more, I'll say, proactive and responsive to ensure that we are able to make the child an active participant in the journey. So when we started thinking on these lines, we realized that I was going to some, at that point of time, I remember I also met up with lot of professors, visited a lot of universities around the globe and other institutes of academic eminence, and I was trying to figure out that what will be that one thing that will really help us, what will be our secret sauce. That point of time, I came across a research paper by Harvard University on augmented storytelling. Now, augmented storytelling as a concept is very new. We are the first brand in India who have started working on this. Now, if I explain this to you in a very layman's language, in a very simple way, in a minute, what exactly this is, augmented storytelling is about taking a child through the learning journey. So, for example, if I'm teaching a child with regard to, and I'm telling him or her a story, so I tell him that a child is standing at a bus stop, a bus comes, he or she gets up, and next moment I tell him, so the story goes on. But as far as my pictures, because see what happens is in our video, we also use a lot of hand-drawn illustrations, beautiful illustrations. We work with a lot of
Right.
artists from across the country. So unlike animation, in animation, what happens, the child becomes a passive participant because everything happened in front of you. It's more like you're watching a movie at a multiplex with a tub of popcorn where you have nothing to do. You're only watching it as a spectator. But what we want is, we want the child to imagine this along with us, be active participant. So what do we do? First picture we show, first thing that comes in the screen is a child standing at the bus stop. Second, we show the child is sitting inside the bus. So this journey wherein the bus came and the child took an effort and climbed up the stairs and maybe spoke to the conductor and found a seat. This is something which is kept purposefully, is kept for the child to imagine. So augmented storytelling is a storytelling technique in which there are various gaps. The story is continuous, but as far as visuals are concerned, very consciously, there are some gaps in between which we want the child to fill up. Because see, the beauty also lies in imagining something, right? If you show, if everything is, step by step, if everything is shown to him or her, there's no scope of imagination. You kill the imagination, which we shouldn't do. So very consciously, this is something we did, augmented storytelling. Second thing that we focused on was, we focused on art and culture. So there are a lot of beautiful hand-drawn illustrations we use. And when we use this illustration, we also consider the class, the grade, the age where the child is. Depending on that, colors are used. So there is a full system that we have devised after speaking to experts, child psychologists, etc., with regard to use of colors, use of music, what kind of music is age appropriate. So we use music as well. So these things like beautiful hand-drawn illustrations, soothing background music, use of augmented storytelling, these are things which actually help a child connect and get interest in a particular topic. Second, also the kind of examples that we use, that I guess is very important. And this is something where content also needs to be customized and localized, meaning to say a particular example which may appeal or which may strike a chord with a South Bombay kid may not be appropriate for someone in a far-flung remote area. So we need to ensure that we give him or her examples which are appropriate, which they're able to understand, they're able to connect with, real life examples while teaching a particular topic. So these are things which we have very consciously kept in mind.
That's very interesting. And that kind of conscientious behavior, or that kind of conscientious approach, and purposefully kind of creating enough for all kinds of students, that itself can be quite tedious. But nonetheless, I think you're doing a fantastic job at that, Achin.
I think all credit to the team, Zarina. So we have a very, very committed team here. We work very closely with more than 250 professionals, and many of them are very senior teachers, musicians, artists, people involved in various other areas, like, for example, who are involved in the pedagogy aspect. So all of them contribute to it's a completely team effort. My job is just to ensure that we stick to our core objective and make an impact. So I think that's what matters most.
Absolutely. Teamwork, the whole teamwork. Absolutely. Yeah. And that brings me to a couple of questions that I definitely have to ask you before this conversation ends, Achin. So please tell us, what is a belief that you swear by?
Zaina, first and foremost, I think I really believe that every child has potential. I honestly believe this from the core of my heart, that everyone is equally talented. The talent might lie in a different sphere. Someone may be good at something, somebody else may be good at something else. But I believe that engagement level defines the academic trajectory. If a child fails, the system fails.
Mhm.
Thus, because see, if you look at, from your own practical experience also, you will see so many people who were not the brightest of students in their school lives have done phenomenally well for themselves in their professional journey, maybe as great entrepreneurs, visionaries, social workers, politicians in different fields. You
True.
must have seen their impact has been great. So, as our past president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, had also once said, the talent for the nation lies in the last bench. So I think that is very important. I honestly believe that every child has potential.
Mhm.
Second, as I was telling you, that I also believe that investment is in education. When I say investment in education, it also includes investment in teachers, educators, right? Investment in the system is the biggest investment that a nation can make, because it not only takes care of for today but also takes care of for tomorrow, right? At some point of time, we need to prioritize tomorrow's strategic needs over today's operational needs if we really want to leapfrog in this journey. So I believe this, that investment in education is the key. And I also believe that each one of us have a responsibility. It's not only about drawing room conversations and blaming the government, but if each one of us take a responsibility to make an impact in our immediate surroundings and helping out, motivating children to study. So be it street children, be it children of your domestic help, that is the kind of, and there'll be a tsunami, there'll be a cascading effect, and things will change for the better. If we aspire better surroundings, we really need to work for it. Third, I also believe that basics of education will never change. As I was telling you, that technology is only an enabler and a teacher is irreplaceable. Also, another thing whose time has come, which finally today I'll tell you, activity-based peer-to-peer learning has a huge potential, and that has been seen across the world. Different case studies, different experiments, and this is where I guess, as far as our pedagogy is concerned, this is where very consciously we need to make investment and creating edtech brands as aid to teaching. So these are few beliefs that I swear by.
That's amazing. What about a couple of words of wisdom? I know that you have sort of entailed and engulfed that in the conversation as well, but something very specific for our listeners, for people out there, even in the education industry, educators, and how they should go about it, even teachers, students, parents. Some words of wisdom from you, Achin.
For educators and parents, I think one thing which I believe is very important is we really need to ensure that we give space to any child, right, to study at his or her own pace. It's really important. If you look at practically what happens in a classroom scenario,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that everyone understands in equal speed. So there may be children who may need little more time. But what happens is, because of pressure of syllabus, because of at times other students getting impatient, etc., he or she may hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's one student in the class who kinds of continuously keeps on asking questions, and because of that, the pace of the class slows down. So at times people do get little upset with him or her. But I firmly believe that it's really important that we understand and come to terms with the fact that every child has an individual learning curve. So we need to give space to it. And not necessarily, if someone is taking little more time to understand it, not necessarily that he or she at a later date will not do well. It may be completely the reverse. Even if you see among adults, you will see, if you go for a meeting, I have seen many stalwarts in corporate world. If you explain something, unless until they really understand, they'll never let you go to the next topic. They'll never let you move on
Mm-hmm.
by merely nodding their head. So I guess one thing which is key for parents and teachers is to ensure that we really treat each child with compassion and care, and let him or her study in their own way. And that will make a world of difference.
Amazing. I also have this same belief, Achin, because you know what I'm coming to realize over a period of time is that every child is taught that we're part of this competition and a competitive world and a rat race. But the thing that children need to understand is that they are not rats and there is no race. You just have to grow and nurture and have your own journey. And maybe if we make them secure enough to sort of believe in themselves and absorb learning the way they understand best, it would really change the sort of education we provide even as a country, you know.
Very true, very true. And also, I think this also, you've raised a very interesting point, Zarina. Also, I think another thing which is really important is that now if you look at the scenario today, there's so much of emphasis on few subjects like science and maths. So
Hmm.
everyone are trying to go for STEM. But in my own career, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, very seldom in boardrooms I have seen Pythagoras theorem being discussed. But yes, examples from world history are quoted liberally. So I believe all subjects or literature are quoted liberally. So I believe all subjects are equally important, right? It's
True.
really important that we encourage our children to study what they like.
Hmm.
And I'm sure if you're good at something, to today's age, what really matters is that you need to be good at what you do, irrespective of what you do, right? So I believe giving more freedom to children in terms of their career choices, not imposing our own unfulfilled aspirations on them, because that really makes their climb much more steep and uphill. And second is giving them more space with regard to learning at their own pace. I guess these two will make a huge difference. Right?
Fantastic. And Achin, lastly, what empowers you?
So I think again, very good question. So I guess to me, what really matters is ability to impact many lives. So I'll tell you, if I'll just take 2 minutes, I'll share with you one or two short, very short, incidents that really empowers me, that really helps me and my entire team keep going, working long hours, especially during pandemic, etc. So very recently, we got a phone call from a girl in UP. She's studying in class 9.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, one of my colleagues that day who took the phone call, I was just around. I was listening to the conversation, and I said, "Hey, can I speak? Can I speak to the girl?" She said, "Yes." She was thanking us, so I asked her that, "Why are you thanking us? Do you really like our content? Are you happy with what you're studying?" She said, "No." I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Then why are you thanking me for?" She
Mm-hmm.
said, "I'm thanking you because I like your content, but I'm thanking you more for the fact that my father comes home early every day because there's only one smartphone in the family. There's only one phone in the family, which my father carries. Earlier, he used to come home long after I go to bed. Now he comes home in the evening by 7 because I take his phone and I study from there. I watch notebook videos. So we have fantastic bilingual content for state boards. So for UP, we have worked quite a lot on bilingual content. So she watches those videos which are based on state board syllabus.
Mm-hmm.
And since those are bilingual contents, at times the entire family, when she's watching those videos, maybe her father is around. So she said the fact that my father every day he comes home earlier because he believes that by coming home early, he helps me with my education. So these are things which really keep me going. Very recently, another small incident. We received a courier in our office
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of beautiful handwritten notes. So very in English grammar. So I was going through them, and I found a small sheet with a phone number. I got back to the sender. I got to know a very senior teacher who now stays in an old age home, and these are his very precious possession. He might be he watched some of our videos, got to know about us from one of his friends, and he sent them to me. He said that I believe that you are doing good work. If these are of any use to you, I spoke to the gentleman. He said, if these are of any use to you, can you ensure that these things actually reach the students? So I was taken aback. I was really, these things give me goosebumps. So these are things which really keeps me going. The ability to impact many lives. And when I see those kind of impact, that really makes us excited. The entire team, I'll tell you, the entire team, when we share these incidents, it really motivates them. And this is the kind of motivation that nothing else can motivate you. Money can never motivate you beyond a point. But when you realize that you're making an impact, especially during pandemic with schools closed, so many children studying,
Mm-hmm.
and you're actually impacting their lives, that actually keeps you going.
Great. That is actually inspiring and truly empowering because maybe the impact is all we need, and a little bit of aid and support. And people like you, Achin, who are true believers and torchbearers of that kind of education and creating that kind of an ecosystem for us. I think that's what we as a world and as a country need at this point in time. So, Achin, thank you for the contribution that you're making to education. Thank you and your team, in fact, at Notebook for making that kind of contribution. You have about 2 million children already, and hope that you have a growing and, flourishing way of reaching out to all these children and students and teachers and be able to actually impact more people as you grow. And thank you very much for being on our show today.
Thank you, Zarina. Thank you so much for your kind words. So I believe we are just contributing in our own little way. There's a huge amount of work to be done. As you are aware, India has more than 28 crore school-going children, the highest in the world, even more than China. So you realize that there's a lot of scope for doing good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best. All the best, Achin.
If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Storytel and The Whole Truth Foods. Thank you for supporting us. So, great week on the network again this week. Definitely do check out the Pragati podcast. Pavan spoke to Krish Ashok. They discussed science, knowledge, and the wonder of Indian home cooking. Staying in the realm of food, on This Round Is On Me, we had A.D. Singh as a guest. Gauri and A.D. discussed the 10 years anniversary of The Table and the 20-year anniversary of Olive. So two of Bombay's biggest restaurateurs have a conversation about the restaurant business. All Things Policy celebrated 500 episodes on January 27th. Manoj talks to Aditya and Anirudh about the surprising origins of the podcast, its evolution over the last few years, and its exciting future. This episode also marks their video debut, so definitely do check that out on YouTube. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet talks to Ranjit Pratap Singh. Ranjit is the co-founder and CEO of Pratilipi. Pratilipi is a company that's recently acquired IVM, and Ranjit on this episode discusses his plans to build a homegrown media empire, his love for comics, and how India can have its own comic cinematic universe. And finally, Cyrus had an exciting week. We had some amazing guests this week. We had Vishal Gondal come and talk about Fauji. We had Atish Tathir talk about the various issues that he had been facing with his OCI card and other things like that. We had Adam Dow talk about things going on in the US and the evolution of what's happening there. We had Siddharth Kannan come and talk about his history with Cyrus and his new show. So definitely do come check that out as well. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
We live in an age of disruption, of immense change in every aspect of work, life, and business. But is the old way of doing things truly dead? And are we ever going to stop saying the new normal? Join me, Varun Dugirala, on Advertising is Dead every Tuesday as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, creators, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond to dig a little deeper into how we got here, what we're doing now, and where we're headed. You can catch all the episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.